Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the meeting of the Review Standing Orders Subcommittee. And thank you very much for coming. Before we start, I just wanted to take the opportunity to thank everybody very, very much for their input over the last couple of weeks. There's been a huge amount of information and work to get through, and I know most of us have attended workshops over and above the usual committee meetings. So thank you so much for that. There were some excellent ideas, and as I said at full council, I wanted to welcome input from as many members as possible. This couldn't be more important, and I think now we're going to go through and hopefully come out at the end of this with recommendations to take to full council. So at this point, could we have Sederunt and apologies?
Yes, thank you, Chair. We've got 6 members present this morning. There's 1 vacancy still in this subcommittee. We've got 2 apologies from Adam Wilson and Stephen Thompson, and we've got Elaine Murray and Rob Davison here as their substitutes.
Thank you very much. Any declarations of interest? Okay, I'm just going to pass you over to Rona for an introduction, and then we'll have a look at the minutes. Yeah, I just want to... We're still on the introduction.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, today we have hopefully reflected the debates and the discussions that we've had at the workshops, and as the Chair said, we are very grateful for the input that we have had, which is beyond the norm when we extend these invitations. But I think it's obviously very important for the governance and the business of the council that we get the committee structure that is right and that assists the new management structure to get the business through on behalf of members. So that's what we're going to discuss today, and hopefully come out with recommendations for full council.
Thank you. Item 3, the minute of the meeting of the 29th of April. Can I have a proposer, please? Any matters arising? Agreed? Okay, so item 4 is the proposed new committee structure and scheme of administration and delegation to committees. Over to Rona.
Thank you, Chair. If I might just highlight some of the main changes in the things that we've reflected that have been discussed, and first of all in the actual committee structure, the colour chart that you have before you. You'll see that we now have the 4 service committees that reflect the 4 directors and the heads of service work below them. The other main asks and adds that came from the discussion at the workshop were a specific subcommittee of full council to oversee the new waste arrangements. So that's been suggested, and that's reflected in the chart, as has a new finance, procurement and transformation committee. This takes a number of the delegations that were previously with policy and resources that were, for want of a better word, that the corporate delegations, so the finances that were monitored by that committee for the whole council, not just for corporate services. It also reflects the recommendations that came from audit, risk and scrutiny about somewhere specific for procurement reporting. And it gives a home to transformation as a committee. So the discussion was that the existing transformation board would no longer sit, but that instead it would come to a subcommittee of full council. I have been asked offline about the Crichton subcommittee that has disappeared. That reflected discussions that both at the workshop and with the director, that the Crichton sub It has very few delegations actually, and these could be easily absorbed with the Economy and Resources Committee, that new committee, which has lost a lot of its delegations to Finance, Procurement and Transformation under the proposals. So that would save having an additional subcommittee for the Crichton. It could just be reported into Economy and Resources. So the suggested delegations for Economy and Resources include a delegation about the Crichton work. I've also had a bit of feedback that maybe planning applications and local review body are not strategic committees, which is a fair point. So we should perhaps just reflect that these are committees and move planning apps and LRB somewhere else in the chart so that it shows they are the statutory functions of the planning authority rather than committees that are similar to those that are there. So happy to take views on that and to move if people think that's appropriate. In terms of the delegations, we have moved the delegations to where we think it's now the right service, the right place. We have drafted new delegations for the Finance, Procurement and Transformation Committee that are reflected now in Appendix 2. I think we've also taken the opportunity to update some of the delegations. There were some quite outdated delegations that maybe reflected what had happened in the last administration, but certainly was no longer the practice or the business of those committees now. So we've taken the opportunity just to tidy that up. So I'm happy to take any questions and receive any comments.
I'm just going to open it up. Elaine, yeah.
Just a couple of things that I've obviously been reflecting on these structures is, should Finance, Procurement, Transformation be a strategic committee rather than a subcommittee? And are there advantages to actually be one of the strategic committees of the council? And the other one was about the waste. I mean, would we want waste as a permanent subcommittee, or would we want that as an ad hoc subcommittee?
Either is possible. I think, and certainly happy to hear members' views about whether the Finance, Procurement and Transformation should be a strategic committee. It certainly has some hefty delegations. The idea, I think the waste, the discussion at the workshop around waste was it would only sit for as long as was required, the period that would be required for the implementation. So we could call it ad hoc, or we could say it's a sort of got a fixed life till the end of the implementation. Ad hoc tends to mean called when required as well. So I don't know whether members feel that the waste should have a timetable, schedule in the committee diary to start with. How often it would meet, I don't think we got into that discussion. So that's a good point. Thank you.
Ian?
I suppose there's maybe some other points, but I think when I looked in the chat, I think even a quick discussion maybe with Rono offline, just in regards to it. When I seen finance procurement, I did think, what's the difference between a subcommittee of full council and a strategic? Probably the same, just depends on the number. So if you're putting in, I think it merits 21 members on a committee of that size of delegation. So maybe it should, and maybe when you get back to the plan applications, local review, should that sit in the very right-hand column, which is regulatory in real terms, civic government licensing boards and that, maybe sits better with that, because it's that type of process type of. Employment appeals almost sits here as well, but maybe not. So just in regards to that, I thought I'm just kind of responding to Elaine's point there. And I suppose the other point I was wanting to make was the workshops. The way we've done this, I think, is excellent. It's an excellent way of doing it. It'll streamline this process today. We'll have a better debate rather than just turning up with three different group opinions and try to marry them up. We'll probably all try to say the same thing anyways, but just in a different way. So I think that's been a really good, it's been a success. The level of workshops or member officer working groups, whatever you want to call it, we've had in regards to this. I think this is a template as a starting point. It's really good. Maybe a few points we'll pick up beyond that as well. I mean, I've got maybe some particular points. I'll come in at any time, just whenever you want. But I know Ivor had his hand up before me. But just in regards to maybe the next part as well. But I think the stuff in regards to audit, risk and scrutiny was absolutely appropriate. That stuff taken out there, the There's a few things there, but I'll let other folk come in. I'll just really respond to what Elaine's saying. I think when it comes to these, it's for like the finance and procurement, it's more about the numbers that we have on there. I think, okay, but it probably does sit better as a strategic committee. Maybe gives it that higher level of position within the council as well. But I do think there's other points that when we get to the next, I'm probably more bothered about the next report, item 5.
So Ivor, sorry, and then Richard.
Chair, it's just the relationship between Appendix 2 and Appendix 3. I'm sort of struggling a wee bit. If you go down Appendix 3, now I take it that is the changes, which will be reflected in Appendix 2, because we're being asked to agree Appendix 2. And if you take the second one, 5.1.2, strategic oversight current of the development of the Dumfries and Galloway Strategic Partnership, and that's going to the full council. 5.12 in Appendix 2 says to act as reporting committee for finance and procurement, people and transformation. Now, that's the 2017 scheme. Why haven't we got the new scheme in there to agree it? Yes, but this is 2017. None of them match up. That was just the first one. The second one, monitoring and oversight of all aspects at 5.13. To ensure effective use, including shared services. Different thing altogether. They don't match up.
I did pick up on a few of them in regards to references, policy and resources. So one of my questions was going to be kind of similar to Ivor's.
We should be here to recommend the scheme that we want to see. This doesn't reflect the changes that are in Appendix 3. This looks like, as it states in the front of the papers, agreed 23rd of May 2017. Where's the one that proposed, or the draft, that we should be actually looking at to say this is what we agree?
I have a thought on that as well. Thanks for letting me in on that. The Appendix 3 is maybe not that helpful. It was the working paper that we had at the workshop, obviously, and things have moved around since then. Appendix 2 does reflect the changes that I think we were hoping to make. There's a couple of things.
It doesn't. Yeah. It clearly states that 5.12 should be currently is the strategic oversight and development of the Dumfries and Galloway Strategic Partnership. 5.12 and the new one is to act as reporting committee. Monitoring and oversight of, now where's it? The reporting committee of the finance, it's at 5.13 and 5.14. Capital and revenue budgets.
Sorry, there's no correlation between the numbers. These were from the old scheme. The
yes,
Appendix C was no scheme.
But the scheme is saying that finance, procurement and transformation, as proposed, would look after monitoring and oversight of all aspects of the council's capital and revenue budgets. Yet, in the new one, it's to act as a reporting committee for finance and procurement. Well, finance and procurement is the capital and revenue budgets. Finance to me, anyway. I don't know what finance to other folk is. It should be going to... So they don't tie up. This new one quite clearly states in the front, it's a scheme agreed on the 23rd of May.
No, the way this always works is it's updated, so it's agreed. That was the first. This is a scheme when it was updated for the new administration and the council, and all updates always show that as having been agreed. But then the updates are at the back, shown when they take place on page 47. You'll see all the changes that have taken place through the Standing Orders Subcommittee to date, and then there'll be another line in here that full council made a whole scale. I mean, it's whether we keep that or whether we say this is a new scheme of administration. Is this so radically changed? It's not just tweaks anymore. Do we agree a new one at full council in June, and that'll be the date on the front of this?
Should have the document that is going to be what we take forward.
This is the document, so if there's something not right in it, then we need to change it.
Why at 5.12 are we reporting to Economy and Resources Committee to act as a reporting committee for finance and procurement, people and transformation?
No,
then it should be going to the finance subcommittee, or what we're calling it.
apologies, that is, when it's got a capital F and a capital P, those are the finance teams, that's the services, so that's the people that are doing the work. So it is the reporting committee for Paul Garrett's team and Karen's team. The operational matters will go under this committee because this is Lorna's committee. So any operational matter about finance and procurement, how they're performing, that will go there. But the corporate finances, the budget and the monitoring will go to the Finance, Procurement and Transformation Committee.
Rona, that was one of the reasons why I was sort of contemplating whether it should be a strategic committee, because I'd also mark that off. And if that is if Finance, Procurement and Transformation is a strategic committee, then presumably the reporting would be to FPT and not to Economy and Resources.
The feedback from the director was, this is where the director will bring the reporting on the performance of those teams, not on the outturns or what's happening with the council's budget. But if Paul Garrett's team is overspent in their operational matters, or if they're short of resources, as in other service committees, this is the appropriate place the director felt for reporting about her teams.
Can I just, so when I read that, I picked that theme up across 2 or 3, so it may well, you naturally think that Paul would report to the Economy and Resources Committee, as it would be Policy and Resources now or full council, but what we're saying is actually the change here, because he may well come under the Economy and Resources Directorate, but he would report to the Finance, Procurement and Transformation Committee. Is that what you're saying? That's what I thought it was 2 or 3 themes like that I picked up as I read through it.
Richard, do you want to come in?
Yeah, I was just going back to the leader's comment about the role of this new Finance Procurement Committee, whether it's a subcommittee or a full committee. Well, obviously, if it's going to be a committee forever, it's ongoing, playing a strategic part in the council, then it should be a proper committee. But then it raises the question of why, if you're creating a finance committee, you're getting rid of a policy and resources committee, so you're replacing one thing with another, really, aren't you? So you've got to think about how we do that. Do we need to, so we're reinventing the policy and resources committee in another form. You've got to think of what vision you've got for the council. We want a council that acts in a corporate way, and how do we do that? We need a committee that's overseeing strategy and the corporate working of the council. So, yeah, I would support the finance committee developing on a strategic line. I think we should go through the Economy and Resources Committee, I think, and now with what to see what we're actually saying it's going to do, because we're creating this new committee. How's the Economy and Resources Committee? What's its delegations going to be? So perhaps we could go through that and see if we're happy with what the Economy and Resources Committee are doing.
The principle that was being worked to is that each of the directors has a service committee now, a reporting committee, so that deals with their service issues. And at the moment, Policy and Resources has almost got a dual role. It's the reporting committee for corporate services, but it also does all the corporate reporting as well. So it was taking that away from the pure service committee, so that all the directors have an equal committee that they come to with their service issues. And if you look at 6.1.1 on page 28, that shows the strategic delegations that will be given to the Finance, Procurement and Transformation. So everyday service issues and performance would not come to that committee or subcommittee that looks like we're recommending now. But it would have that strategic oversight of the finances. It would set the procurement strategies and the financial strategies. But as I say, everyday items from those services wouldn't come to that committee under the proposals.
Yeah, that's fair enough. If you look at 5.11, it says an Economy and Resources Committee on page 22. It says the first one is develop and approve corporate policy and strategies to further council's priorities. So why should the Economy Committee decide the council's priorities? Why not education and learning.
It's because that the policy officers who develop those pieces of work report in through the Director of Economy and Resources. So they would bring that work to you, or it could be, I suppose, the full council, because that's where a lot of the other non-financial work, it could be a full council matter, that, rather than Economy and Resources.
So the Director of Education will be reporting to the Economy and Resources about simple or educational learning priorities. Is that what you're saying?
They would be part of that plan, but their actual monitoring of their performance in those areas would go, in the first instance, to their service committee, the Education and Learning Committee.
I think there is a case for them going to full council. And I mean, I think that does mean that the full council will have to meet more often. But having said that, we met 10 times last year, so we meet very often anyway. So some of these maybe, so maybe we should be looking at least a 2-monthly cycle for full council and taking these reports at full council.
I think that's fair enough, but obviously, yeah, you've got to think about these committees and how long they're going to last, because Economy and Resources is going to be a huge committee, so is communities. Education and learning is going to be it's losing delegations, and social work's quite a it's not overburdened either. So obviously that takes us on to the monthly or 6 weekly cycles, because these larger committees with big agendas are going to have to meet maybe monthly instead of 6 weekly or 2 months.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, again, go back to, really good with the working shops, but we've not had enough time to study it properly. But I still think, for me, it's the basis and the foundations of something that could be presented to full council, and we'll now have a bit of time, not that much time, but to look at a bit more. But I would imagine we'll monitor it. Come September, we'll look at it again, see if it's bedding in, what it's looking like. And as a full council, that is, I would imagine we should, because we'll have had the time. It's all kind of, it's not ad hoc, but we're up against, I feel as if we're up against time here, trying to get this together, and it's difficult to try and learn it. So, but to me, it looks very good. It actually reflects what we were saying as part of our discussions. Maybe there will be some reshuffles. I've maybe got some things about the level of delegation in the next report, and would refer to chairman rather than just chairs. But that's just simple wee pedantic things, but they maybe are. But now's maybe the time to iron that stuff out. So there maybe is pedantic stuff here as well, but we should, or convenience, whatever it may be. But I think this is, foundation-wise, if you look at the committee structure, the committees that are there might be some moving about and shifting tables, so to speak, but and it's getting used to that point. Okay, Economy and Resources is looking at the wider aspects of the economy and resources, which the resources side where policy and resources are. But actually, you've got a Finance, Procurement and Transformation Board that are delving into the work and operational side of the more capital stuff. And so whether you get folk for the Education Directorate, or the Economy Director, or the whatever directorate may be, they might have to come in and report or whatever, depending on the subject matter, what you're looking at. It could be the road side, we could be, okay, finance, transformation and procurement, we could say, okay, see this £3 million black hole we've come across, where will we put that, finance, procurement? It could be that they drill into that. It may well be that they even set up an ad hoc subcommittee to look further in. I'm only thinking hypothetical, the scenarios, it might or might not, it'll be up to it, it'll have its choice, but I think as a basis to move forward, present it full council, but I do think we'll have to have a look at it again back in September. But because we're up against the time, this is reflecting the budget decisions that were made. I don't think anybody was against the restructure. There was consensus across the whole council to say, okay, let's look at changing from 4 directors to 3 directorates. And this is just, I think it reflects fairly well the feelings of this, the wider council, because everybody was invited to it. And actually, I think at the last workshop, it was on myself, and I was ad hoc. I was in out because I was doing other things at the time. But from memory, it does reflect quite well what we actually, what the theme of what we're trying to push and drive forward. But it has got to take a wee bit of time for us to get our heads around about this change again, as it always does. It always takes 3 to 6 months, doesn't it? It does. But hopefully we can tidy up, especially the regulatory side. I'd like to see that set to the side so we're absolutely clear, because I've got quite a number of members that love being in that stuff. Councillors seem to like being in the quasi-judicial or the regulatory, and it's nice to see them making a decision and it's implemented and it's done. This other stuff's so strategic, sometimes you just didn't see the end point. So anyway, that's my wee bit.
I did just a couple of questions just to help me prepare for full council. Do you think it would be well, more helpful if Appendix 3 were removed then, that shows the changes, and just show members the whole new scheme.
Chair, that's no. If you look at that 512 again, the services as summarised at Appendix 3, and you go to Appendix 3 and look in Appendix 3 and it says the services as summarised at Appendix 3. Now, what is Appendix 3?
It's Appendix 3 in the actual document, it's page 36. It shows all the services that come under each directorate, and that would then report to each committee. There's too many appendices. Are we happy to recommend that it be a strategic committee then, and if so, how many members would I suggest in the report?
My feeling, if it's strategic, it should align to the rest. And if it wants to drill into particular items, say the £3 million black hole, they can set up an ad hoc committee if they wanted, subcommittee, if they wanted. They may or may not, which would be a reduced numbers with a particular focus. But I think it should align to the rest if it's strategic.
It was discussed at the last workshop, wasn't it? And the opinion that it was a sort of specialist thing with finance, and maybe only a core group of people would be on it. But I'm quite happy to widen it out. Yeah. And they could have a subcommittee if need be.
Yeah, I think that, I mean, we are losing a committee, so it's not as if, I mean, I thought, we have to be considerate of the burden of work that probably some councillors are going to have, but we are losing a committee as well, which had a fairly heavy workload, so it wouldn't be impossible to have a committee of 21.
Yeah, there was a question about the Audit, Risk and Scrutiny Committee. Do you remember we talked about that in the workshop as well? So we wondered if the composition and membership of that particular committee, Ian?
I wonder, because I mean, I missed that, but clearly it was brought to my attention, quite rightly so, because I missed it. And the thing I would say about that is no adverse to administration members being part of the audit and risk side, which was the particular issue, but then I think you'd have to split the committees. You'd have to have two committees. I don't see how we can have a audit, risk and scrutiny committee, because the scrutiny committee in particular is definitely an opposition committee. Absolutely. So I think it would have to be a clear consideration for the council. If you're wanting administration members on the audit and risk, which is, I didn't see any problem with that, then you'd have to have two committees. And that would have to be reflected through the potential which slate would be presented on the day to reflect the new changes.
I don't know that it does have to be an opposition committee for scrutiny if we don't have a cabinet system, which we don't. I mean, I think in those councils where they have an opposition scrutiny committee, it's where they have the cabinet system.
I suppose I'm speaking from experience. It doesn't have to. You're absolutely right. Council can do whatever they want. It's got sovereignty. But I do think at the end of the day, I've experienced both, and it works far better, the scrutiny side in particular, if it's opposition members. It is difficult, and I've been there as an administration member, scrutinising the administration. It doesn't really work. You can't help it because you've got a foot in both camps. Audit and risk isn't an issue, but the scrutiny side is an issue, I would say, and I've done it. I've been both sides. I've been it when I'm opposition, and I scrutinise at a different level completely to when I'm in administration, and it's just a natural thing that happens. There's not much you can do about it.
I'll reflect those points in the full council report, and could be discussed at full council then, if that's...
I think there was a certain amount of criticism from Audit Scotland about the fact that the administration wasn't involved in audit. So I think we need to sort part of that. I also think that it should be, the chair and vice chair should be opposition members. I don't think, even if there are administration members on it, I think the chair and vice chair should continue to be opposition members. I was wondering whether should scrutiny be a subcommittee of that and have only opposition members on it?
I suppose, I don't want to say too much about this because I've made it quite clear for the offset, Elaine, is that I feel there should be a minimum of 2 senior councillors with the opposition, especially now it's a minority, even more so. And that's the way I would, if we were coming up with a proposal.
That may be possible, Ian.
Well, if that's a possibility, then that would change the whole ball game, because I think it should be reflected. Maybe discuss that away from here.
So, Rona, is the paper going to be have options for that?
I may not put options, but I certainly put it as a point for discussion. I think it'd be appropriate for members to maybe move those options at full council, if that was okay, rather than me put them forward. I think it's a member issue that should be suggested.
She's on the point of process. It's just something I've always thought about, and it's maybe no discussion over here, but I would imagine because of the restructure, there will be a slate presented on the day. And if that's the case, there could be offline discussions before the council, see if there's an agreement beforehand or not.
Rona, I just had a question on page 55. Oh no, it's not page 55, sorry. The one about the key indicators that I spoke to you about.
Yes, it was under the audit risk and scrutiny delegations. There was a slightly odd one that I don't think we've ever used, and I don't know whether it had never been changed from previous years, but it was 5618.
Page 57.
Yeah, page 57, to set key performance indicators and targets to be monitored by area committees. Now, obviously that's the service committees that actually do that now, that they set their performance indicators, and a number of them are monitored by area committees, but I don't think audit risk and scrutiny would have any role in setting KPIs that would then be monitored by area committees. I think it would be recommend to the service that might come out of one of their reviews or audits, that there'd be a KPI that's then monitored by area committees, but I don't think it would be for that committee to do that. So I think that's maybe just been a mistake that's been reflected from the service committees. So we've taken the opportunity to remove that if members are agreed, because I don't see the relevance of it now.
I think that came from the scrutiny committee, looked at key performance indicators to make sure there was a sort of consistency and that they were smart, the KPIs. So probably be the policy and resources job in the past to look at that.
Members, are you happy to go to the recommendations? So we've been asked to consider the new committee structure for recommendation to full council as attached. And 2.2, the revised scheme of administration and delegation to committees for recommendation to full council.
Can we make sure we get rid of the men, as it were? Because I've made this point before. But
Thank you, Leader.
I thought it should read chair or convener. If we're keeping up with the times, it only should do.
Thank you, Leader.
And it reflects properly what's actually happening, doesn't it?
Thank you. So moving on to item 5. If I can find it. So this item, we're asked to consider the amendments to the scheme of delegation and responsibilities to officers. Rona,
Just a short introduction, thank you, Chair. Yes, the scheme of delegation was approved. This one was approved on the 28th of March. We've looked at what further updates have been required now that we've been working with it for the last 2 or 3 months. There was a couple of omissions in that one of the heads of service didn't seem to have any particular delegations at all, so we've made sure that the Safe and Healthy Communities head of service now has specific delegations, and some changes in the community side just to reflect that for the director there. If I could just point out on page 133, the very last page of your papers, page 133, sort of halfway down, the proper officer for planning for signing the LRB decisions, that should be now the Director of Communities. They are not the Director of Economy and Resources. because the Director of Communities will be becoming the proper officer for all the committee papers and all the committee meetings at the end of the month after full council. So that should be the Director of Communities there. Thanks. So, and one final point was, I think Councillor Thompson at the last workshop suggested that heads of service should review where they've been given specific monetary delegation, and is that still adequate, because it has been a number of years since these were updated. I haven't had any feedback on that yet from officers, but if that does change, and I'll obviously point that out at full council, there is one in particular on page 86 at 4.8.17. It's the delegation to property services to sell and purchase property up to a value of 150,000. That doesn't seem to me to be very much these days for some of the transactions. So maybe members would consider an increase in that once I get a suggestion from the officers for full council about what is an appropriate amount.
Members, any comments?
Well, mine's a wee bit tenuous. It's good to have some of these things highlighted as well. £150,000, is that for sale, did you say? Unless my understanding with any kind of real size community asset transfer or sale, whatever, it goes through the committee structure anyways before it gets to, and we do get to a point where we normally make a decision with the rest of it. But see, when I was reading through this, and I've spoken about this in a number of guises, different ways, so we're looking at the delegation responsibilities to officers. Now, it's members that kept coming back when it resonated with me. So I've mentioned a number of times, I think member services, so as a description, so member services I think is inadequate for the members. And I'll be absolutely clear what I mean about that, so there's no reflection whatsoever on the staff or anything like that. So if we say that even committee services, so use different language, it wasn't member services, it was committee services, and you took everything that the member services does for committees, set that to the side, what's left for members. That's a member service. I'll tell you where that's coming from. I've spoke to a number of MSPs, other councillors across the region, so on and so forth, across the region, the country, I should say, Scotland. So, okay, when it comes to your member services, what level of support do you get as a member? Because we're elected into office, we get a 5-year term. We didn't get an office, fair enough, but we get a 5-year term, we get a degree of support. What's actually there? And so they've all got quite a reasonable amount of support, whether it's a PA or a shared PA or a shared level resource at a group level or whatever. They have got a minimum support, and I thought, well, we didn't have that at all. And they found it quite unbelievable that we didn't have anything at all. We have our committee services, if I describe it, use that language. So again, the staff are first class. There's no two ways about that. So when it comes to the resource to the members themselves, so, and again, it talks about here in training, as I was reading through it, the delegations to the officers, they can agree to go on training, so on and so forth. So I've been committed as leader of the group up to now, certainly. I've said, right, let's do appraisals, any training, so on and so forth. So to go through that, and we're criticised again, it was mentioned certainly through the best value assurance report, that we had done. So, okay, when it comes to training the members, I mean, I don't know why the members allow that delegation to go away from when it comes to the training. I don't know why as a member, so the group leaders in real terms should be saying, okay, my members in my group are the X needing that, and that, and we've got to send it off to an official to get ratified. I didn't see that. We should just have a budget. It should be as simple as that. If we, are we going to have a level of resource? This is not going to get picked up in here, but it's something I've certainly got a very keen eye on, because I think there's a weakness in regards to the level of resource that the members of this council have actually allocated to themselves, and I don't know what it is, being honest. I don't see it, I haven't actually seen it yet. It's something I've got to pick up on through as we go through. I've spoke to it very briefly to Rona, and we're discussing it again next Tuesday at the Audit Risk Scrutiny Committee. Say, okay, well, I'll look at this subject matter. How do we compare across the rest of Scotland? So a wee bit of a tenuous link. I think this is actually, kind of again back to the amount of time we've had, we'll have more time between now and obviously full council, so there might be other things come up. But that was the thing that kept resonating with me as I'm reading through it. I've got certain members wanting X, Y and Z. What resource have we got? And it was agreed through Scottish Government actually. It was encouraged even that members of any council across Scotland, it shouldn't just be somebody who turns up to a council and that is their end of job. They want people who are in everyday life, so whether they're business, employment elsewhere, and it's a shared like 2.5 days, 3 days sometimes, depending on what it is, on average on a weekly basis. I think if that's the type of people we're trying to attract as councillors, then we should be given the right level of resource to allow them to fulfil their actual role, whether it's a committee, whether it's in leadership roles, whether it's leadership of the community, whether it's whatever it may be. I think it needs to be looked at.
Thank you, Ian, and I think that's a discussion that we can continue to have. Any more comments, members? Yes, Elaine.
Just on the point that Rona raised about 4.8.17 about the value of 150,000. To be honest, with property prices in Dumfries and Galloway being so low, I don't actually find that an unreasonable figure still.
I think the point was, Elaine, that it hadn't been reviewed for a long time. So it was just to make sure that things hadn't changed financially too.
Now just drill into a wee bit more. So what does that actually mean then? Because like I said, I had the reassurances that actually it goes through the area committee, it goes to local members would know about it, and it kind of if it's a sale or anything like that. So I just wondered what does that actually mean? Sometimes it goes way beyond that, or does it mean if it goes over 150, it has to then be reflected back up to a strategic committee now? I just wondered because I've never seen any. It's not like something just appeared on. I've never seen anything as a member since I got involved with the council that something just appears that I'm not aware of. I've been made aware of it somewhere, and I thought with clear decision lines in place that says, okay, members must see any assets that are being sold off, especially with Community Empowerment Act coming in.
I think the area I was thinking of was that members may approve, say, a piece of land to be purchased for a particular reason, so that they'll approve the purchase, but sometimes they may not be aware of, say the DV, the district valuer, comes back with a value on the land that we have to pay to get that piece of land that's above the 150. Should the officers, because they've got a decision, act on that, or should it come back to committee? Was the sort of example, because I'm aware that sometimes that happens.
I'd probably mind to be Elaine, and just because I'd probably err on the side of caution, because again, any report, just reflecting back in my memory right now, is that we'd get a report saying, lad, about what to buy a piece of land or invest in that piece of land, and it's the valuations such like would be the approximate valuation, so that information would probably be in the report, and we would then say, okay, spend up to, that's a matter of cost, we say, okay, spend up to X amount, whatever it is, so probably err on the side of caution wouldn't be a bad thing.
Members, are we, Elaine?
It's a different point on 4.15.27. It says prepare and adjust as necessary the calendar of meetings and holidays in consultation with the leader and deputy leader. That came as a surprise to me, because I don't think I've ever been consulted about when we were having meetings or the holidays. We were just, in fact, sometimes meetings have been changed to suit other people, directors occasionally. On one instance last year, it was actually changed to suit a director, and I don't think there was any consultation with councillors at all. So I think we need to have a bit more of a grip on that, and to ensure that we get the patterns of meetings and so on that the councillors are asking for, so that they can have some, as much as possible, to have some certainty as to, particularly for people in business or in work, when they need to take time off.
Yeah, I think that's well picked up. Thank you. I think the practice has become, and whether we want to write this in or change it to what is here, is that there's usually consultation with the chair and the vice chair about the dates of meetings, perhaps not necessarily with the leader. So maybe it should be the leader, deputy leader, and the chair and vice chair of the committee. Certainly reflecting the discussion and the workshops, we are going to prepare a calendar for after recess and into next year that I think will provide a little bit more certainty and planning as to when the committees are taken up. I think Councillor Hislop's point about Tuesdays being service committees and Thursdays being subcommittees, and certainly I think the service committees will meet every 2 months, with the exception of communities who I've had a discussion with the director, and he's happy that should meet every 6 weeks, just because of the size of the agenda that they've had recently. So we'll try that and see how that works.
And also to have a full council every 2 months rather than every 3 months, because of the additional reports or responsibilities that was going up to full council. The first, I didn't manage to get to the second workshop because I had another engagement in my diary, but the first workshop there was some discussion around recess, and some people were arguing for recesses which were a bit more family friendly. I wondered if there had been any progress on that.
Yeah, I think rather than say we're going to take a longer recess, I think we had agreement that we would just, we'll manage the diary so that the first 2 weeks in July don't have committees, rather than say that we're going to have a longer recess. I think that might not be popular. So I think we will certainly aim not to have committees the first 2 weeks in July from next year, and we're also going to have a couple of weeks in October for the school holidays, where only if absolutely necessary would members be called for a meeting. So we'll try and manage to have no less meetings, because we're actually going to have a few more meetings the way that the service committees are working, but we'll try and plan them so that these times are available for people to have holidays with their families.
Yeah, Rona just mentioned communities meeting every 6 weeks. I think economy and resources should also be 6 weeks, because it's going to have a huge agendas as well.
I'm not convinced that's as necessary, because some of the Economy and Resources Committee's responsibilities will be going to finance, procurement and transformation. So I don't know that the Economy and Resources really needs to meet every 6 weeks.
I did consult with the director on that, and her view was that every 2 months, and if it was thought to be inadequate, we could then change that to 6 weeks. But she felt with the delegations that had been moved either to full council or to finance, procurement and transformation, that every 2 months would be adequate.
And the final point from our group meeting is that meetings sometimes go on for 5 or 6 hours, which is not good decision making. After 3 hours, then think you lose the will to live. So I think we have to monitor in that and try and keep the meetings to maximum of 3 hours, 2 to 3 hours.
Yeah, I think we've all had similar discussions about that.
I think that first point that Elaine made round about I suppose I would describe it as being discipline. So if there's a meeting being changed without notifying the proper people, the proper members of the council, I should say, then that's a discipline that maybe, and that's one of the things I want to touch on through the member services, so to speak, that structure, how it works and what goes where. But I thought Katie Hagman had brought it up at a workshop. She's so the recess should align to the school holiday term, and I would be quite happy to be up front, because if we're up front about that going forward and say, okay, this is a change, it aligns with more national agendas as well, what's happening on a national level. My constituents would see more of me, we definitely would, by doing that, and that's what they actually want. They want to see that. So it doesn't really matter to me whether they say, okay, let's be a wee bit cautious about this. I've got no fears about it whatsoever. I'm quite upfront about it. I've mentioned it to a number of constituents. Say, listen, is that no more time off? Says, no, it doesn't mean more time off. It means less time at committee during that period of time, more time in your communities. That's what it means in real terms. So I'd be quite happy to support it quite upfront.
I have some sympathy for that point of view, actually, because it also would mean that when we look at future councils, that younger people with families might be more prepared to step forward and become councillors if they don't think they're going to have to work throughout their holidays and going to have all these sort of problems with childcare and all the rest of it. It doesn't affect me because I'm far too old, but but for younger members it is an issue.
What about members who maybe have jobs? They can't align their jobs to school holidays. Why should members actually have it? Even the staff of the council, they can't say, right, we'll have 6 weeks off in July to August. They can't do that. I know, but they can't just say, we'll stop work for 6 weeks because, well, I need to do childcare. And the school holidays happen for everybody, not just for elected members.
I don't think anyone's suggesting that we're taking 6 weeks off.
I still think that, plus,
What you're saying
if
is
you've
it's how
got
it
a person
looks.
who's waiting for a planning application to go through, it might be financially constrained, can't have a planning meeting for those 6 weeks because, well, we want a couple of days jolly somewhere. That's not very good for business in this area. I had one application where a guy was waiting for it to happen because he had timescales to meet. Now that could have cost him about £80,000 just because we didn't have a meeting that week. You have to take consideration also of the services that we are providing to the public that have to come to committee. Fair enough if you don't want to discuss whether budget issues on various strategic committees, because that can be done in a 6-week period, you could give that. But on a person's licence for a bar, person's licence for a taxi, they need to be dealt with accordingly. And I think you need to actually, if you're taking this job on, you have got some responsibility to turn up to these meetings and be in a timescale which allows the business to flow and be required to flow. So I think it might look nice having 6 weeks where we don't have committees, but people are waiting on decisions.
Yeah, I think the compromise, the 2 weeks in July, we'll try to avoid the meetings. That's a step forward. Yeah.
I mean, I think Ivor brings up a really valid point there, but when it comes to panels, boards, things like that, they can meet ad hoc anyways. But plus, I've been a convener to the licensing boards, and Ivor is a convener, and we know there's quite a lot of delegation there. So if somebody's really desperate, you can actually sign it off again as an individual. But I do think it's a relevant point, though, because if some folk, whether it's a planning permission or not, I had somebody on the phone to me who's been waiting 14 months, 3 months determination time on the way up this morning complaining. And if I get involved, I'm frightened that I delay it. So I mean, it's planning's one thing. But I think it's a valid point, anyways. It is a valid point what he brings up. Maybe be considered, but there's always deputising. The integrated joint board for me. So for instance, we'll meet twice through the recess in the 4 weeks. I didn't take a summer holiday normally, so it doesn't bother me so much. You're exactly the same, aren't you? Whether it's between committees and integrated joint board, Rose. So it's not that we didn't deal. It's not about stopping it. But I think it's important that there's an emphasis that any important decisions that will affect people's life, whether it's economy, financial, so on and so forth, we must take consideration that we can meet or have some kind of expedited process in place that can meet that requirement.
So how can we reflect this discussion round?
I think if members are happy, I will put it in the committee report, and I can summarise what we're feeling. We could make an exception, I suppose, for if we call all of those the sort of statutory committees and boards, and it would be the subcommittees and committees that we would. It's not just for members. I think we struggle to resource from a staffing point of view. October holidays from a staffing point of view are difficult. Not that everyone's off at the same time, but everybody wants to be off some of the time during that period. And the same at the beginning of July. So I'll think of some wording that reflects that is about family friendly, and but also allowing more time for members to concentrate on their ward business during those periods.
No. Members? Ian?
I'm just thinking, I think what Ivor's brought up again is important, but I mean, expedited procedures, we do have that. With the scheme of delegation, maybe members can be involved in a different way from what they are at that moment, and if we agree that, then fine. If it's an important decision, we do it with the licensing board in particular. It may be another way if it comes to it. But I do think we should we didn't get off, but we get a 6-week spell where we can actually get into communities and be much more active.
To the recommendations. So we've been asked to consider the amendments to the scheme of delegation and responsibilities to officers. Agreed? I don't have any more business, so I declare the meeting closed. Have a good day.